and welcome. You're watching the Mojo Story, our digital platform that brings you some of the most interesting and important voices from across the world. Today, in our fixation on COVID, have we forgotten to talk about other diseases that kill? We're going to have perhaps an uncomfortable conversation about cancer because a very important, honest, searing new book by a renowned oncologist, but also someone with a personal story, asks the question that many dare not ask. Are we approaching cancer treatment all wrong? The tough question is this. In our hunt and our despair and our attempt to try and find a treatment for cancer, are we actually punishing both people and their caregivers? This new book by Dr. Azra Raza, Columbia University-based oncologist and author, says that we should be focusing on the first cell instead of the last cell. In other words, we should be focusing money and research and time and energy into preventing cancer, finding that moment before our cells start mutating and attacking themselves, instead of pushing people towards expensive, potentially harmful, and possibly useless cancer treatments. That is the focus of her new book that looks at the human cost of cancer treatment and asks, when is it time to actually say enough is enough? Anyone who has battled cancer or has loved someone who has, this book is for them, but this book is really for all of us because this remains one of the biggest challenges for modern medicine. And let's bring up Azra Raza, who joins us from New York. As I said, she's a world-renowned oncologist, but has written a beautiful, sad, and in some ways tragic book full of sorrow because she lost her own husband, who's also an oncologist, to cancer. Azra, I found your book compelling, yet so sorrowful that it almost broke my heart, because it was so honest. And at the front line of cancer research, one of the things that you write is that you meet with those who are battling cancer every single day, yet you write, till you actually shared a bed with somebody who had cancer, you did not realize how painful this disease is. Talk a little bit about how having a personal experience, losing your husband, Harvey, to cancer, maybe changed your approach as a doctor to the understanding of cancer and what we know thus far.
Thank you very much, Barkha. I'm so honored to be on the show with you. Heard so much about you, and to have a chance to speak to my fellow Indians and subcontinental fellows to really share this story about what cancer means, what we are going through. Your question is very poignant. I measure every grief I meet with analytic eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has a different size. I wonder if they had it long or did it just begin? I cannot find the date of mine, it's been so long a pain. I wonder if it hurts to live and if they have to try, and whether could they choose between, they would not rather die. This is how sharing a bed with a cancer patient changed me, Barkha. Now I measure every grief I meet with analytic eyes. It is true that I had already been an oncologist for 20 years when Harvey got diagnosed with cancer. And yet, when it came to haunt my own family and my own very intimate life, it had an effect on me. Not that I became a different kind of oncologist, but it changed my perceptions forever.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, about that battle. You know, your husband Harvey was also a doctor, he was also an oncologist. And one of the things that means, and you describe it very compellingly, I think, in the beginning of your book, where you talk about how he breaks into the sweat waiting at the airport, waiting to hop onto a flight to San Francisco. You're going on a vacation with your kids, with your family. And as a doctor, both of you precisely know what that moment means. And it means that everything in his body is worsening. We all say casually that, oh, we'd rather die than be terminally ill. But I've also heard alternative accounts from people saying every minute that you live on this earth counts. So how do you determine when it's enough, when it's time to say enough?
Barkha, I have to admit something very important before we go on. And that is that when I started treating and studying cancer back in 1977, like 100 years ago, I started by treating acute myeloid leukemia with two drugs that are popularly called 7 and 3, 7 days of one, 3 days of another. And today in 2021, 43 years later, I'm using the same two drugs to treat acute myeloid leukemia in the most emancipated country in the world. So, knowing that, and imagine the thousands of conversations I've had with the patients, still, if I have acute myeloid leukemia today, I will take the same treatment. This is what I want to confess before starting. Because life is important to us. What is my alternative? If I don't take that treatment, I will die. So when you ask me, Azra, when is enough? Well, for an individual, we are going to try every possible thing, even if there is a 1 in a million chance to save my child. I'm going to take that chance. It's never going to be enough. So we shouldn't put the burden of deciding this on a patient. And the
You know, one
decision,
of I was shocked to discover from your book that after 2005, 70% of the drugs that have been approved actually do not increase survival rates. And you also write that 70% of them are actually harmful to patients. So, can you speak a little bit about, if I were to say medicine has failed in its battle against cancer thus far, would that be an accurate statement? And can you talk about the failure of these drugs or their potentially harmful impact? And how did you approach this question as a doctor, but then also as a spouse? Did you at that time say, yeah, I know scientifically this drug doesn't work, but I'm going to try it anyway,
yes.
when it came to Harvey?
Yes, that's all important question, especially about the drugs you're asking, because Barkha, this year is the 50th anniversary of President Nixon declaring war on cancer in 1971. So it's a very, very sort of opportune time to be talking about where is the war right now? Have we won it? Have we lost it? And if we are losing it, why? Let me just give you a few statistics then. When the president declared war on cancer, he said 50% patients with cancer are dying. We need to do something about it. He promised to eliminate cancer. He didn't promise to understand cancer. He promised to eliminate it. And he promised that he's declaring war in 1971. Cancer will be eliminated by the bicentennial of American War of Independence, and that would be 1976. And 1976 came, and what happened? Nixon was gone, and cancer was still being cancer.
Yeah.
So today, 2021, unfortunately, cancer is still being cancer. 50% patients were dying then. 32% are dying today. And the 12% decrease in mortality that has happened in cancer is because of anti-smoking campaigns and early detection through screening measures like mammograms and PSA and colonoscopies. So let us not give credit to very few advances that have improved treatment for a few thousand patients out of millions. My point is that, look, we have to take blinders off our eyes and look at, stop just promoting the positive anecdote all the time. Instead, look at the majority of people with cancer who present with advanced disease. They are dying at the same rate they were dying in 1930. And as for those who are being cured today, and in America, that makes 68% of patients, what are we curing them with? Slash, poison, burn. So, where have the $250 billion gone that were invested in research? It's all gone towards basically 95% is trying to understand the molecular mechanisms of cancer. It's highly complicated. And even that, they're trying to understand end
What
stage disease.
one of the things you write is that it is pure arrogance to think that a handful of molecular biologists can change this, what hasn't changed in decades. Why do you call it arrogance? What has happened? Do you think your community of fraternity is delusional? Do you think it's hubris? Or do you think it's ignorance? Or do you think it's about profit? I have to address the elephant in the room.
Yes, it's all of the above. It's all of the above, because isn't it hubris to think that you can create something in a mouse in your lab, call it cancer, then give it some drug, cure it, and say, aha, I found the cure for cancer. Make big headlines in the newspapers that say, cure for brain tumors found. Only in fine print will it say in mice. In the meantime, you get more grants, you get your papers published in Nature. It's the culture that we have developed. So I say it's all of the above: hubris in thinking that we can understand cancer. It's a grab for money. It's also not, I'm not saying that every oncologist or cancer researcher is just greedy and doesn't care for patients. In fact, in my 43 years, I've never met an oncologist who didn't care for their patients, who didn't want to do everything possible to help. The problem is, if they are given drugs to through FDA approval to give them to patients, a drug that has 20% chance of prolonging the life for 2 months, but ruining the patient financially because it costs $100,000, they have to give it. A drug like Tarceva that will cost $26,000 and increases survival by a couple of months, 12 days actually. But if I don't order this drug now, for the indication for which it is approved, I'm opening myself to legal challenges. And
Okay,
neither,
hang on. Talk about this drug, Tarceva. You say that in an advanced stage of cancer, it only enhances life by 12 days. Now, I have to ask you an uncomfortable question. Suppose somebody had told you that your husband, Harvey, could live another 12 days and you could give him this drug. Would you think those 12 days to be an eternity, or would you say not worth it?
no,
How
I
did you
would not.
apply your understanding of the failure to move on medicine vis-a-vis cancer to your own life?
I started by confessing to you that 43 years later, I'm using the same drugs for acute myeloid leukemia with the same dreadful results, but I would take it today. And of course, I would take every treatment for Harvey possible. And I keep telling you that if somebody tells me my child is dying but has 1 in a million chance, I will take snake oil for it, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Even if it ruins the whole country, I will take it for my child. But that shouldn't be the choice, Barkha. This is what I'm saying, that we need to take an overarching view of where the war on cancer is. And where it is that today 95% drugs that are brought to the bedside by researchers, 95% fail entirely. The 5% that succeed in terms of improving outcome by a few months for 20 to 30% patients, but cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, the statistic is that the cost of anti-cancer drugs is going to use up more than 80% of all cancer spending. Imagine all cancer spending, admitting patients, treating them, this, that. Just the cost of cancer drugs alone in America will use up 80% of all the budget by
So
20.
you're saying 80% of what anyone spends on treating someone with cancer goes into medicines that effectively do next to nothing to increase significantly the survival rates of a patient.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow. That's scary.
Yes.
And do people know that when they spend that money? And oftentimes, I'm sure they can't afford to spend that money.
You see, that's the other question, Barkha. As a doctor, when I'm giving a patient the chance of, look, here's a drug I can now give you. This is your next hope. Um, I can't say to them that it's going to cost $100,000. I'm not allowed to. So everybody has some kind of insurance, right? So they
Yeah.
go through the insurance, and the insurance only covers a certain amount or percentage of the drug. The rest the patient has to come up with as co-pay. And that means they have to mortgage their home, their children, their next generation suffers. In fact, in America today, 42% of newly diagnosed cancer patients, 42%, Burkha, almost half, will become completely financially ruined by the second year of their diagnosis. This is the state of affairs.
So it's not vacuous or oversimplistic for me to say that thus far medicine has failed to find anything significant in the treatment of aggressive cancer.
I think that's a very fair statement, because today, when people start telling me that, oh no, you're being too negative, you're too nihilistic, we have made so many advances. Look, lung cancer patients, stage 4, are now responding. 20% of them can live for 5 years even. It's all true, but I ask them, would you like to have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, or stage 4 brain tumor, or stage 4 ovarian cancer, and tell me with confidence that you have a drug that's going to help you survive so many years? Are you serious by saying all this? It's really, it's a matter of semantics. It's a matter of what I call, Barkha, paycheck oncology. everyone's
Paycheck oncology, yeah.
everyone's livelihood basically depends on using this system. But you can't blame individuals. You can't tell me not to do this when everyone else, when my survival depends on exactly doing that.
Paycheck oncology is a very grim description, especially because when a patient or a caregiver goes to an oncologist, you would assume that you're literally placing your life, what's left of it, in the hands of the oncologist. Now, given your understanding and you're calling this truth out, what would you like to be able to say to patients that you think oncologists do not say?
Well, I really can't have a different conversation with patients right now until we change ourselves, honestly. I have to be telling the patient the same thing, that these are the drugs that are available, this you can try, etc., etc. I think the important thing is that I want to bring a complete revolution in cancer care. I
Yeah.
want to turn the whole field 380 degrees around. Everyone and their grandmothers trying to chase the last cancer cell and kill it. I'm saying, look, you've tried it for 50 years, it hasn't worked. Why not listen to our grandmothers who said prevention is the best cure? Let's turn everything around.
And is that not happening? Is there no research into how to prevent cancer? Is the research and the money and the dollars spent and the hours entirely on how to contain the mutations?
Today, 95% resources are spent on studying the last cell. 5% are, I'm talking about the resources that come from the government, that are the major funding sources for us. Only 5% are given to early detection plus prevention, which means that most of it goes to, even that 5%, most of it goes to anti obesity and anti smoking campaigns. So a very tiny fraction of that 5% is left for doing research on early detection. Today, everyone talks about, you tell me, Barkha, you're a very knowledgeable representative of the public for me. Tell me that in screening for cancer, What new thing have you heard besides mammography, PSA, colonoscopy, and pap smear?
Yeah.
Why haven't you heard? Why not?
Well,
And that,
I'll tell you what I did not know till I read your book is that that 70% of all medicines after 2005 that have been approved by the FDA do not work and actually harm. I did not know that, and I consider myself a reasonably aware citizen of the world, which
yes.
says to me that we're not being told this.
Well, the thing is that headlines are announcing cures for cancer, but that's, so misleading because people are deluded into thinking that, oh, cancer is being managed very well now until they get cancer or somebody they love get cancer. They go to the oncologist and they find out that if some woman has presented with stage 4 breast cancer, she's going to have a horrible, painful death very soon. 42%, no, 45% of women with stage 4 cancer in America today, that's practically half the women with stage 4 cancer today, are being hounded by collection agencies because they haven't been able to pay their bills. So think about how obscene it is that in a country as affluent as America, we are doing this to 45% women.
So,
Why?
So let me understand what is the efficacy of these drugs if used at an earlier stage. I get that you've basically told me that 70% of these drugs are worthless and may even be harmful when it's a later stage in the disease. What if the early detection takes place? What if it's before stage 3 and stage 4? What if it's a stage 1 and stage 2? Do you look at these drugs differently then?
There is a two-pronged answer to this question. Before we had cars, Barkha, we were traveling on animals, right? So the most important thing was having a faster horseshoe, right?
Yeah.
Now we came up with cars. The question of applying these horrible treatments to early stage is like trying to fit a horseshoe on a car battery. I mean, the things we have developed for end stage disease, we can't use for early stage. We are going to have much better treatments, which I want to give you just one example. Here, I'm working with biomedical engineers at Columbia University for several years. We're trying to develop this kind of a chip. Can you see it? A
Yes,
tiny little
yes.
chip inside that.
Yeah. Can
And
you hold it up a bit? Can you hold it up a bit? Yeah. Yeah. Tell us about this.
so this is a kind of chip we are developing, Barkha, that can go under the skin of individuals. Our plan is to put it under the skin at birth.
What do
And
you mean
this
at what do you mean at birth?
at birth means when children are born, they get vaccinated, right? At the
Okay.
same time, we can also insert a tiny little chip in them and
And
then
what is
use
this
this
chip? And what is this chip made from?
made from something called hydrogel. These things can go under the skin,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's fitted with a filter that can, for example, trap the larger cells in blood, which are the cancer cells, because blood cells are very small. So we can literally use a coffee filter like technology, which has pores in it, and smaller blood cells pass through it, but the larger cells get trapped on it. So the larger
Okay.
blood cells, if they are circulating in blood, we call it a liquid biopsy. But we can also trap them, Barkha, on this little chip and simply using your cell phone, which will then be fitted with an ultrasonic device that you just pass over the chip every day or once a
Wow.
week or once a month. Let's say that we now detect that there are 5,000 giant cells that have been trapped in this chip. That means I have to worry now about what's going on. Cancer is there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Next step is to get these cells out and look to see which organ they are coming from. Are they come from pancreas? Are they coming from the liver? Are they coming from the lungs? Where are they coming from, even these cells? Then, even with the current technology of PET scanning, etc., you can start looking and focusing on that organ. But very soon we will have microbots that can go and follow these giant cells and detect where they are coming from. So, what I'm saying is, so much is possible if only we put the right resources. Why should I be the only one doing this, which will take me another 100 years? At least 50% of the resources We have cancer patients today. We should spend 50% of our resources on helping them, but not hurting them,
Yeah.
not giving them drugs that are going to. Why not spend that money on better hospice care, providing better services for families dealing with horrible diseases of their loved ones? I want to spend that money even more properly, and then the
What
other
I,
50%.
what I'm hearing you say is you do not want a drug-oriented approach to end-stage cancer.
Because it's been a total failure.
And why are enough people not saying this, in your
Paycheck
opinion?
Paycheck Oncology. We've built a culture. We can't blame just researchers, or we can't blame oncologists. We can't blame just the government agencies, because they are put under so much pressure by advocacy groups, patients, families. You're not approving enough drugs for cancer, so they start approving every drug, lowering their bar of approval to improvement in by 2 months in survival. I'm saying if you find cancer early, you can eliminate the first cell. It won't cause the slash poison and burn toxicity. It won't ruin them financially. Prevention is the best cure. Put
Okay,
more money.
before I come to how to prevent cancer, and there's so much debate even over that, because almost everything in the environment today is considered carcinogenic, and so a lot of people go, so what should I do? Should I stop living? And I'll come to that in a moment. But let's talk a little bit about the psychology of human beings. So paycheck oncology, the harmful drugs, all that is taken. But if you do not have hope, what do you have? And that is perhaps why some people may say to you, Azra, you're being nihilistic, right? You have to keep hoping. And I agree that a doctor can't lie to her patient. But how does science keep moving? And how do you handle your patients, you personally, having lost a husband to cancer, if you can't offer hope?
So that's a very deeply philosophical question once again, Barkha. I'm so impressed just by the humanity with which you are approaching the problem of cancer. Thank you so much for doing
Thank you.
this.
Thank you.
I face dying patients all the time. I see 30 to 40 cancer patients every week for the last 35 years. I have a cutting edge cancer research lab. I'm a cancer widow. I have stood on both sides of the bed as a caretaker and a caregiver. I don't need any lectures from anybody about any aspect of this cancer. I wouldn't wish what I have been through on my worst enemy, in fact. You're absolutely right. Till the last moment when I held Harvey as he lay dying in my arms, I was hoping that he would somehow miraculously be raised from the dead. Hope is itself a very important thing and must not be taken away, of course. But you see, the important thing that I do with my patients is that when you can't look too far ahead into the future, then the present becomes very important. Now, hopelessness itself becomes subject to action. That because the present moment is so important, you start to enjoy your grandchild's, little third grade graduation ceremony, or you start enjoying a meal with some friends who came by. You start paying attention to the here and now suddenly. And
Yeah.
I tell you, this kind of one doesn't have to beat anyone on the head with you are dying, you're dying, you're dying. On the other hand, make the present more important for them. I tell you, I have the most amazing conversations with my patients all the time, some of which I have recounted in the book.
Yeah.
That moments of sorrow and sadness and deep grieving are, of course, there. But the majority of moments are us having fun, enjoying the moment together, looking at different things that for example, that books we have read, movies we have seen. I mean, and the moments of grace that I'm able to witness, the nobility of endurance that I'm able to see and share with my patients. those are beautiful moments that patients are also.
But do you think then? Sorry, I'm breaking your chain of thought. But do you think then that sometimes it's better not to know? Like I've sometimes said this, that if I have a terrible illness, I actually do not want to know. If I have an illness for which there is no cure, I'd rather not know, because I'd rather spend the time I have happy. And if I know that I'm going to go and there's no cure for it, then I won't make that present count. And I know it sounds almost nihilistic and very self-destructive, but if there is no cure for something, what's the purpose in knowing you have it?
The answer is that there is no simple formula. You may not want to know, Barkha, but someone like me or Harvey want to know everything and then plan for the tiger in the bushes properly. You may not want to
So how
know.
did you guys do it? How did you and your husband do this? How did
This
you
is
attack?
this is one of the saddest things, Barkha, that Harvey was the head of the cancer center. He had been studying leukemia since he was 15 years old. Now he gets leukemia himself. He knows every little thing that's going on. When that shadow on the chest x-ray is expanding, he knows that the fungal infection is reaching terminal stage. And yet, when he would see all these things with me and his treating oncologist standing around, he knew exactly what's going on, Barkha. Someone like Harvey, so well informed, wanting to know everything. Yet, he would turn to me and say, "So, what do you think?" And I took great care never to break his spirit. Never. Never to beat him on the head and say, "Harvey, this means end stage, you have X number of days to live." So even I'm telling you that even people who want to know at some level need to have some hope. And there's no reason not to give it. I was given the best advice by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross when I was 24 years old. And I asked her a similar question. Her answer was, Azra, never volunteer the information. If someone wants to know, they'll ask you. If they don't ask you, it means they don't want to know. And you don't try to hammer it in.
And if they ask you?
And if they ask you, then be as honest as possible. The fact is, Barkha, I don't know. As an oncologist, I can only tell patient you have a 20% chance of response. But are they on the 80% group or the 20%? I don't know myself. So be honest and say, this is what it is. You may respond, you may not respond. And if they want to know, well, if I don't respond, how much time do I have? Well, if you don't respond, you're in the 80%. Then we can try this other approach or this, or after that, if there's nothing, I would say then we'll see when the time comes what kind of supportive care we can provide you. And the people the cognoscenti, people understand. If they want to know, they know exactly what I'm saying without me saying all of that. But I don't
Yeah.
break the spirit of my patients, Barkha. I don't believe that at all.
And yet your critics may say on reading your book that you are breaking the spirit of, cancer patients, cancer survivors. You're effectively telling the world medicine has failed to find any effective treatment for cancer. The only reason for the reduction in cancer related deaths is that fewer people are smoking effectively. And well, I don't know what happens when early detection happens. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
But please, first, before I tell you about how early detection happens, is that what you would say to me?
What, that you've broken the spirit of cancer patients? No, but I can see that that would be said to you. I think you address it in the book where you say that, look, people will ask me about the 68 kinds of cancer which can be contained and so on. So I know you must get this question a lot, and that's why I'm asking you, because I'm sure people will say to you, Azra, are you being too negative? And you would use science to answer that, and so I'm asking you the same question.
Yeah. The problem, Barkha, is that people can't fault me for trying to find cancer early. Because
Yeah.
that is my real message. The first cell, over and over in the book, practically every page, I'm saying that. So instead of breaking the spirit, I tell people that actually what I'm saying is that let's not delude ourselves anymore and let's try to do something different now. So I feel very, very excited. I feel very optimistic. And when you ask me, what are the measures for early detection, then what am I talking about? Well, I just showed you one that we are working on,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
can tell you a few more. I'm speaking in a couple of weeks to the Canary Center at Stanford University, dedicated to early detection of cancer. At Stanford, for example, let me give you a few things they're working on. They have a trial going on, for example, on a smart bra. This is a bra that women can wear for just 2 hours every week. It is it is built with 200 tactile sensors inside the fabric of the bra that constantly can monitor changes in pressure, temperature, the skin,
Wow.
etc. And you never need to get a once a year mammogram. You now have constant measurement of health of your breasts, and if there is extra blood going somewhere, which is what happens as a tumor starts, it starts attracting blood vessels because to grow it needs nutrition which comes through blood vessels. That area becomes hot, the bra will detect it automatically.
I mean, on a lighter note, the bra would finally have some use. Really, like its own. But really, I mean, but this is so exciting. And how far are we from the sort of fruition of this smart bra?
We are very close to having, or let me just continue.
Yeah.
You go to sleep in bed sheets. The
Okay.
bed sheets are built with fibrous sensors that will be monitoring you all night without you even knowing. You go and use the toilet, and part of your urine, part of your feces are taken away and examined for the appearance of biomarkers in urine and feces of any cancer anywhere. So these kinds of technologies are actually happening right now, I'm telling you. But there is too few resources are being given to them. I say this very honestly to you. 95% people in America, the researchers today, are convinced that cancer is caused by mutations. You know why? Because 95% resources are supporting mutation work.
Yeah.
if
I mean,
if if I put in 95% resources in study of ghosts as cause of cancer, 95% people will say ghosts cause cancer because they
so
need
you're
to get that money.
so you're saying mutations is a falsehood?
I'm saying that mutations are a small part of the story because if they were the major part, we would have had a cure. It's 20 years since the human genome was sequenced already. It hasn't cured cancer. Now we have sequenced every cancer possible. We haven't found a cure. So why do we keep insisting that mutations and targeting mutations will be the cure? It hasn't cured anything except one disease 20 years ago. So, my point is very simple: early detection and elimination of that first cell.
I want to close by returning the focus to your incredible book, The First Cell. What is this first cell? And how, if research, energy, money, resources were to be diverted to hunting it down, what would that actually involve?
Um, so, cancer doesn't happen overnight. The first cancer cell doesn't erupt out of nowhere. When I was 18 years old, the reason I got obsessed with the question of cancer at a very basic research level was the idea that within our mortal body, one cell actually has unlocked the key to immortality. Think of it, a cancer cell is ageless. And I became so fascinated at 18 with this idea that, my God, if we can understand how this cell managed to become, no other life form in the world has achieved this.
I mean, it's ageless, you mean, because we can't kill it.
Yeah, it's immortal. It just
It keeps
continues, it
multiplying.
never
Yeah.
stops. So if we can understand how that is happening, we can unlock that secret. We will unlock the secret of aging and immortality for ourselves, for the whole body. That's what, at a naive 18-year-old, I was fascinated with. But then I went to med school because in Pakistan, where I grew up, we didn't have graduate studies available in molecular biology, which is what I wanted to do. So I thought, okay, I'll enter medicine go to America and then just do basic research. But the problem is in Karachi, when I was in med school, I started to see patients.
Yeah.
And then that emotional grip that came from seeing the suffering of humanity, I knew that I could never just do pure science anymore. एंड खुदा के बंदे तो हैं हजारों, बनों में फिरते हैं मारे मारे, मैं उसका बंदा बनूंगा जिसको खुदा के बंदों से प्यार होगा. That became like my guiding principle, that khuda ke bandon se pyar, that is the important thing. That's where. And then once you have pyar, then you know. खुसरो दरिया प्रेम का सो उल्टी वा की धार, जो उभरा सो डूब गया, जो डूबा सो पार. You have to throw yourself heart and soul into the whole question. And so I realized as I grew older and combined my love for science with my love for patients that cancer, and studied cancer deeply, I realized it can't happen overnight. Something is stressing the organ. So something is stressing breasts, for example, where hormones are acting. Something is stressing the stomach, where there may be an infection. And the cells in the area get the message, fight or flight. Either you're going to develop a strategy to survive or you die. And so one cell eventually develops the strategy to survive. So the first cell appears because there was stress in the organ. I'm hoping that in the very near future, we won't even have to worry about the first cell because we'll be treating that stress that is causing the first cell to start.
And do we know anything? Where are we in research vis-a-vis knowing how to address that stress, like almost the pre-first cell sort of, where are we on preventives? I mean, there's been so much debate. Every newspaper article will tell you A is carcinogenic, B is carcinogenic. I mean, I remember growing up reading Maggie noodles were carcinogenic. But what also happens is that you get so fatigued by hearing that everything is carcinogenic that you give up. That's also human psychology.
Yes, of course. And that's a failure of scientists, that we have not been able to convincingly show the public. So I always say that the only way to shift a paradigm is show success of the new one. We have to show success that this thing is actually causing cancer. That has been shown that hepatitis B and C viruses, or H. pylori infection, or the papilloma virus, these are definitely associated with cancers. If you find papilloma virus in the cervix of a woman, you need to consider that this woman may have cancer or can get cancer and get rid of this infection. So I do think that, you ask me, where are we in this? This is my biggest problem, Barkha. We need to be studying all of this. We are not even at the tip of the iceberg of these questions. We need to now divert resources to study early stage cancer.
Yeah. Well, this has been an extraordinary education for me to read your book. I urge everybody who has not read this, I'm sure you're inspired after this conversation, pick up a copy of The First Cell. It talks about the human cost of pursuing cancer to the last. It urges the scientific community to focus not at the end game, but the pre-beginning. The pre-beginning, I won't even call it the beginning, but what happens before that first cell decides to be immortal and really sort of ravage human life. Thank you, Azra, Raza. It's been a pleasure and such a learning. And God bless you for both your courage to stand often alone in your own community and your compassion. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.